Oh hi, thanks for watching my video. Today I thought we would talk about teenagers. Teens have been given quite a lot of attention in the last year in The Sims 4, so I thought what better time to take a look back at the older Sims games and actually see how the life stage of teenager has evolved. We're going to be talking about various aspects of being a teenage Sim in all of the main Sims games to see how much it's changed. So, let's begin. Starting off with The Sims 1. So this part is obviously going to be quite short because teenagers don't exist in The Sims 1. The only life stage you get in this game is baby, child and adult. And after a baby ages into a child, they don't age anymore, and adult Sims don't age either. So there really wasn't much progression through time. The Sims 2, however, took what The Sims 1 had and expanded upon it in a revolutionary way. Every aspect of The Sims 1 was significantly improved, and one of the biggest improvements was the way time passed. Not only were there actual days of the week added, which allowed working Sims to have a day off every now and again, but Sims would actually age and grow into various life stages. Sims in The Sims 2 had babies, but this time around they would age into a toddler before becoming a child, and from childhood they would become a teenager before an adult, and eventually an elder. I appreciate that Sims 2 introduction was a bit more than just teenagers, but The Sims 2 was the biggest step up we've seen from one Sims game to another that I felt I should at least touch on how time and aging in general changed. But let's talk about The Sims 2 teenagers. So, teens in this game were physically taller than children but noticeably shorter than adults and young adults with smaller physical frames, so it's pretty easy to distinguish a teen from the other age groups. They also had their own clothing category in Create a Sim, so again, most of their outfits were only accessible to other teens. In terms of personality, teenagers were about as customizable as adults and elders are. The Sims 2 only really lets you determine the personality through their lifetime aspiration, their turn-ons and turn-offs, and their zodiac sign. During gameplay though, playing as a teen is a different experience to playing as a Sim in a different life stage. Teenagers often have wants and fears that are specific to them, or they might want to sneak out or do their homework. They can have wants for things that only their life stage can do. Some examples of things that only teenagers can do is that they can develop acne if their hygiene needs go too low. They can also check themselves out in the mirror, and they can get into trouble for things like sneaking out. Your teenage Sim could initiate a phone call or receive a phone call from another teen that they're friends with, asking them if they want to sneak out that night. If the answer is yes, then later at around midnight, a car will pull up outside the house and your Sim will sneak out and go on a late night adventure with their buddy. There is a chance of them being caught out after curfew and being brought home in a police car, resulting in the parent Sim yelling at the teen for sneaking out. A positive memory is gained if they can sneak out successfully, and a negative one is gained if they're caught by the police. Teens can avoid getting into trouble altogether though by simply asking their parents' permission to go out. Another way that teens can get yelled at is if they come home with bad grades. Even though, unlike children, teens can't be taken away from the social worker for bad grades, they'll still have consequences for dicking around at school. As soon as a teenager checks their report card, after getting off the bus, their parent will come over and start lecturing them if their grades are bad. Alternatively, if they get good grades, they'll automatically run and show their parents how well they're doing, and their parents will start cheering for them. Relationships are expanded on in the teen years from childhood. Now, not only can Sims have friends, but they can also develop romantic connections with others. Teenage Sims can develop crushes on other teens. They can perform several romantic interactions, including having their first kiss. The main romantic interaction that they can't do is woohoo, but they can go steady with other teens, which allows for more complicated storylines. For example, they can cheat, they can break up, so there's a bit more room for drama in the teenage years. In terms of being responsible outside of school, teenagers are also able to drive cars, they can get part-time jobs with a limited number of promotions, and they can also earn scholarships through good grades and high skill points if they plan to go to university. which most teenage Sims will have a want to go to uni. So that's a general summary of teenagers in The Sims 2. Let me know if I missed anything there. I don't think I have, but for now, let's get on to The Sims 3. So, similarly to The Sims 2, teenagers in The Sims 3 have a smaller frame and height to adult Sims, making them easy to distinguish. They also had their own clothing, mostly similar to adult clothes, but just in a different colour. Personalities were expanded on in The Sims 3. You can still choose your teenager's zodiac sign, but turn-ons and turn-offs were removed and a few new things were added into their customization. This time around, you could choose your Sim's favourite food, colour and music, and you could give them 4 personality traits. Sims 3 teenagers would have wishes based on their traits and relationships, and this time around, Sims would gain positive and negative moodlets based on their experiences. Sims, in general, not just teens in The Sims 3, would also have their own social interactions based on their traits. For example, a Sim who was a great kisser would have access to interactions that are specific to that trait. In The Sims 3, quite a few things were carried over from The Sims 2, and we got some new gameplay for them as well, taking into account all of the DLC. So let's start by touching on what was carried over from The Sims 2. Teenage Sims could still check themselves out in the mirror, they could still drive cars, and they still couldn't be taken by the social worker, unlike children. Sneaking out of the house at night was also an option for teenage Sims, but in The Sims 3 there was a bit more to it when it came to getting in trouble for things. The Sims 2 really only punished teens for sneaking out and getting bad grades, but in The Sims 3 there were a few more mischievous things teenagers could do that would land them in trouble. Teens have a curfew of 11 p.m, 1 hour later than children, and if they are out at this time, they'll get a positive moodlet for being out after curfew. Like The Sims 2 though, teens can be brought home by the police if caught out too late, which would give them a negative moodlet. Pulling pranks on things was also something teens could do that, if caught, would get them in trouble. Teens could plant whoopee cushions, they could sneak hair dye into shampoo bottles, they could do a range of things at home to cause inconvenience to their family members. At any time, households that have teens in them will be given the opportunity to go on vacation for a few days without the teenagers. This opens up an opportunity to throw teen house parties while the family are away. If the teenage party is thrown, there is still a chance that their family come home early and catch them. And if they do, that teen is being bollocked. Parents could punish teenagers in a few different ways. They could ground them, they could take away privileges like using the computer or watching TV. Teenagers could also be put in timeout. Pretty much every type of punishment given to a teen will result in some kind of negative moodlet from them. They can also get the sulk on and experience mood swings. School for teenagers is also a bit more of a bulked out experience in The Sims 3. When at school, children and teens will sometimes get pop-ups with opportunities to do extra activities for a particular class. Or a parent might be asked to deliver a permission form for a school field trip. So even though the school is still a rabbit hole, although this time we actually see the school, there does seem to be more of a feeling of being involved in The Sims 3. I guess because you get more pop-ups during the day of what the child or teen has been up to during class or at lunchtime. The school is also host for a few milestone events that are also rabbit holes. For example, teenagers will be invited to prom, which takes place at the school. Prom is a pretty big deal in The Sims 3. Teenagers will get a few days' notice so they can plan their outfits and ask another teen to be their prom date. On the night of prom, a limousine will pick up all the teenagers and take them to school, and throughout the night you'll get pop-up notifications letting you know how prom is going. Teens can win the title of prom king or prom queen, both of which give positive moodlets. The school is also used for graduation, which teens will attend towards the end of their time in that life stage, and sometimes teens will even be asked to be valedictorian, which again gives them a positive mood buff. Teenagers can get part-time jobs like in The Sims 2 with a few promotions available, and they can also sign up for one of the 8 different after-school activities. In terms of relationships, they are fairly similar to the way it worked in The Sims 2. teens can develop crushes and get into relationships with other teens by proposing they go steady. So that's The Sims 3 in a nutshell. And finally, we have The Sims 4. Teenagers in The Sims 4 are the same height as adults, but they do have smaller frames, less curves and more of a round face. Although I think I should point out that this wasn't the case for a few years after The Sims 4's release. Originally, teens were very difficult to tell apart from young adult Sims, and their wardrobe is exactly the same this time around, so spotting a teen in this game was quite tricky. In terms of personality, you can choose your Sim's lifetime aspiration in Create a Sim, along with only 2 traits, no zodiac signs this time, but you can select their likes and dislikes. During gameplay, teenagers will have wants and fears, but they are very different to the previous games. Wants aren't very specific to being a teenager, they are quite generic, and fears are in a different panel altogether, existing in the form of traits, which only happen after a few sim days. Again, fears aren't really that specific to the sim individually, or their life stage, as there are only a select amount of fears that could be dished out to any sim, so you'll never have something along the lines of fear of being rejected for a kiss by Dustin. That's too specific. That's like some Sims 2 level stuff. When it comes to getting in trouble with teenagers, The Sims 4 took a slightly different approach. This time around, more focus was put onto the parenting side rather than the misbehaving teen. At least until we got the high school expansion pack, which came out only 8 years into The Sims 4's run. Children and teens have character values which are influenced by how they respond to situations or how they behave in general. There are 5 total character values for children and teens, and during this life stage they can behave in ways or be influenced by their parents to gain a high or low enough behaviour to earn a trait. For example, teens and kids who lay out the dinner table and keep up with their homework become responsible, and teens that get low grades and sneak out without permission become irresponsible. Speaking of sneaking out, again, teenagers can get in trouble by being out of the house during curfew hours, which for the first time can be set by you as the player via the parent board that comes with the Parenthood pack. Pranks were also brought back from The Sims 3, so now teenagers could set pranks around the house that might, for instance, break the toilet, or they could sneak a stink bomb into a school locker. School is a great place to set pranks for fellow students and teachers, and for the first time ever, we can actually go to school. Well, we can go with teenagers, not children. The high school day works pretty much the same way as an active career. It's a bit repetitive, but if you've ever wanted to see your sim in class or eating at the canteen, at least now you can. And it isn't just pranks that can get teenagers in trouble. If you decide to walk the halls when you should be in class, you might be caught by the head teacher, resulting in an after-school detention. Along with high school being an active experience, teenagers also have some of the same experiences from The Sims 3, but again in a way that you as the player can actually see and participate in. Prom was carried over, and similarly to The Sims 3, teenagers would get excited in the lead up to prom, and they might win the title of prom king or queen. It is also possible to be voted class jester. And this time, instead of asking another sim to be your prom date, sims can actually craft promposal signs and make the whole interaction a proper spectacle. Prom isn't the only active school activity. You can also go along to the career day, which happens once a fortnight, and you can also attend graduation when your teenager is nearing the end of that life stage. Depending on your teenager's grades, for the first time they may be able to graduate early. This does mean that they miss out on attending a ceremony, but they will be able to go to university early, even as a teen. Teenagers can also earn and apply for scholarships to university. And a few other things that have been carried over from the previous games are the ability to work a part-time job and the option of 8 different after-school activities. Teenagers, like in The Sims 3, also experience mood swings, but in The Sims 4 they also go through puberty and phases. I suppose the only main thing missing completely in The Sims 4 is the ability for teenagers to learn to drive. That's only because driving isn't a thing, and neither are cars. Not at all in The Sims 4. And my final point on teenagers in The Sims 4 is about relationships. So again, teens can develop crushes and start relationships with other teens. The main difference is that this time around teenagers can mess around, which I guess is kind of like woohoo. I mean, the animation suggests that it is woohoo, but they remain clothed, so it could just be a fiddle, I don't know. And teenagers who are in a serious relationship can exchange promise rings. And that is the evolution of teenagers in the Sims games. Which game do you think did it better? I'm kind of leaning towards The Sims 3. Sims 2 is probably my favourite game overall, but The Sims 3 did teenagers pretty well, I think. But I would love to know your thoughts. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe, you know I love it when you do that. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.